This is Marimbalogy, my name is Charlie, and today we have an analysis video of Prelude number 1 by Ney Rosauro. This video is coming to us from Esteban in Laredo, Texas. Thank you so much, Esteban, for sending this in. If you would like to have your video featured on the show, you can send a YouTube link, Dropbox link, or Google Drive link to marimbalogy@gmail.com. Let's get started. Warning, this section contains opinions. You may have different opinions, and that is okay. I encourage healthy discussion in the comments below. All right, really nice job by the intro there. There's a couple things that I think could make it a little bit better. First of all, I want you to look at these first two notes. Not only are they 16th notes instead of 32nd notes like the rest of them, but they also have fermatas on top of them, which means that the composer wants them to be pretty long, not like super long, but long enough to give enough emphasis on it. Okay, now down here at the accelerando, you definitely have the chops to do what you were trying to do, which is just give it a lot of extra fire and passion at the end and really burn the end of it. Which that was pretty cool, but it was a very abrupt change to the speed you were going to that really fast speed, and I think you missed a note or had a hiccup in there, so it was even more abrupt. So you totally have the chops to pull off what you were trying to do. You just need to make it a little bit smoother, a little bit more gradual accelerando instead of just like slamming on the gas pedal. Okay, and then down here at the bottom, it says rallentando molto. Molto, of course, meaning a lot or very dramatic. And that last note ends with a fermata. And once again, just like the two fermatas we started the piece with, I feel like you could really take some time on that note. Just be like, this is the intro. Now the next part. And just give just a little bit more space and a little bit more time before you start this next section. All right, really nice job in this section. You have a very pretty and beautiful sound on the instrument, which is awesome because it's a synthetic 4 1/3 octave marimba, and you're just pulling such a great sound out of it. This kind of goes along with that video I released a couple weeks ago about not being a gearhead and using the most out of the gear that you have. And you're just doing an amazing job. Like, I completely forgot about the fact that you weren't even playing on a rosewood because the sounds you're making are just that good. I think in this section you have really good pacing. You're doing a good job phrasing the melody and adding a little bit of ritardando at the end of the phrase, and that's very tasteful and done super well. One thing that's a bit of a matter of taste, so totally up to you, is you can experiment with opening up the glissandos a little bit, or at least opening them up sometimes if you want to add emphasis to a certain chord. And with the grace notes, I would play them maybe just a tad bit softer to emphasize the primary note that comes after the grace notes. And that might give it just a little bit more clarity, but that's more of a taste thing. You can take it or leave it. Okay, that time I felt like you gave the fermata enough time to breathe there before starting the next section. Okay, this section also sounded super pretty. You did a really good job voicing the melody so it was always heard. You had like a really awesome emotional climax and then kind of a retraction, which was really effective and really pretty. All of that was really great. I just want to call attention to one thing in particular here. Right here. First time mezzo forte, second time mezzo piano. Now, there's a couple reasons the composer could have written this. He could have wanted it to sound just different the second time. A lot of times if you have repeated material, you want to change it up a little bit on that second time to keep your audience interested. But in the previous section, we played twice, and he did not do that. It's just mezzo forte both times, which does, I mean, you could still play it differently the second time if you want to give it some interest, but he didn't write anything there. In this particular section down here, he did write mezzo piano the second time. So you have to think, why did he do that? And I think the answer is right down here. On the second ending, we have a big 3-bar crescendo and then a climax. And you did not play the second time any softer than the first time. And that did not leave you room to do a 3-bar crescendo. Like, it almost didn't really change dynamic at all because you're already kind of playing forte. So I would definitely bring it way down and maybe even go to piano instead of mezzo piano. That way, when you get to the crescendo, you can really give it a drive all the way to the end. Okay, in this section right here with the grace notes, this is another situation where personally I would like to hear the primary note that's after the grace notes have a little bit of weight and a little bit of an accent to it. Otherwise, it just sounds like you're playing just like a 30-second note rhythm instead of that, like that grace note feel. Like digga-dat-da-da, so I think that would be cool. Another thing that is totally a matter of taste here is, right, that was a terrible circle. Drawing with a mouse is hard. Okay, so here on the very last bar, and this is a matter of taste too, but you have 16th notes going into a sextuplet. So theoretically, the sextuplet should be faster than the 16th notes. Or if you look at the way that the melody's voiced, it's kind of got a triplet feel to it because you're emphasizing the notes of the triplet. So it should sound a bit like you're going from 16th notes to a triplet. And in your interpretation, you kind of played these the same speed as the 16th notes, where the composer has it going a little bit faster, but then he also has a molto rallentando there as well. So at least the way that it's written, he wants it fast for a second and then slow back down, and you kind of just play them all as if they were 16th notes. So this is like a really nitpicky thing, and it's definitely a matter to taste. You could probably listen to 10 other performers play this, and they'll do it just like you did. But staying true to what the composer wrote, I would maybe experiment with it and see if you like it. Okay, this section right here, this is actually where I think you can improve the most on this piece. Okay, so you're doing a very repetitive technique, right? You have your left hand, and then your mouths 3 and 4 are hitting in your right hand, and you're doing that the whole time. It's the same technique the whole time, and it's relatively difficult to do that fast. The thing you want to watch out for here is that you don't want the difficulty of the technique to affect your phrasing and how you want to interpret the melody. Like the whole piece up until now, you've done an absolute beautiful job of phrasing, and everything had these like glorious arcs to them. Everything was very clear. And then we get to this section, and almost everything's the same volume, and almost all the phrasing goes out the window. Okay, like you have to tell a story in this section, especially when you're doing a repeated technique over and over, or an ostinato over and over. You need to tell a story with the melody right here. Okay, there's a couple ways you can do this. I've really viewed this section as a call and response between the higher voice and the lower voice. Like if this was scored for a quintet, like that would be 2 instruments on each side telling that story and communicating back and forth. So when you phrase this, I would phrase the upper notes and then phrase the lower notes as a separate phrase. In fact, if you look at the music, I think he kind of does that. Okay, so he has the ever ambiguous tenuto markings over some of the notes. Now, of course, on a wind instrument, if you have a tenuto marking, you play the note with a little bit longer length and with less space in your articulation. On a marimba, that's not really possible. When you hit it, it's just going to ring for however long it wants to ring for. Okay, but the way that it's being used here is he's showing you the call and response and the kind of like how that works. So if you look right here, these two measures, all the notes right here have tenuto, and then these two notes have tenuto, and then all these notes on the bottom right here, from here to here, they do not have tenuto. So that is kind of like, that could either be an unimportant part that's meant to just be in the background, or at least how my ear hears it, that's the response to the notes that are marked in tenuto. And he kind of goes through this for the whole section, and he stops writing the tenuto markings about on this page right here, because the ranges are so extreme. I think it's implied, it's going to be implied anyway, that those high notes are a completely separate phrase from the low notes. Like here we get into treble clef, right? So the treble clef notes are that high melody, and then the bass clef notes down here are the response, and it kind of alternates back and forth between that call and response with the clefs. So he kind of stopped using the tenuto, but I think the general idea is still there. Like bring these out, and then this is a different idea down here. Now something else I want to call your attention to is if you look here, measure 36 and 30 through 38. Okay, you're hitting the same note twice, but one has a tenuto and then the other doesn't. So oftentimes when you see this sort of thing on percussion instruments, you want to give emphasis to the first note, the one with the tenuto, and then really back off on the second note. So the audience member, they only hear the tenuto notes as the melody, and then the not tenuto notes are just kind of the ostinato in the background. And I think he really wants those specific notes to be emphasized, and you kind of perform them exactly the same, but I think they should be different because he wrote different articulations on those notes. Okay, and then down towards the end of that phrase, I thought you did a really nice job with the rallentando and the decrescendo, and that was really nice and really well done. And let's see, and then we have DSL Coda, so let's see where it goes. Okay, so there's definitely a couple things to talk about here. Okay, most of the recap and the material we already covered, my comments would be the same. Then we get down to the coda. Let me pull it up here. Okay, I thought the first 4 bars of the coda were really well done. They were well paced. The sound quality was really, really good. You gave that fermata at the end a pretty good amount of time. And then we get down here to the bottom. And I would say the same thing about these 2 notes as the first 2 notes of the piece. Those are 1/8 notes, and then the following notes are 32nd notes. So in my mind, those first 2 notes should be just give a little bit more space and a little bit more time to, and then start the accelerando on the 32nd note pattern. Okay, and then down here, towards the end, you actually had the same issue you had in the beginning of the piece, which is where you really want to push it lightning fast, like super speed, and you have the chops to do it. Your techniques, it's very good. But there's a hiccup in there, and it's abrupt. And that those combinations are not, they're kind of like destroying that whole phrase. Okay, so you want to practice doing that very gradual, like gradually go from slow to ludicrous speed and not have it be so abrupt. And that would have a much greater musical impact to that climax note at the top. Okay, down here at the bottom, that fermata is another time where I would just give it more space and just let it breathe a little bit before you come in with these last 2 notes. Just give it just a little bit more time to let those ideas sink in and let the sound dissipate in the room. Okay, now at the very end of the piece, just remember, if you're in a concert hall and you hit that last note, it's gonna bounce around the hall for like 3 or 4 seconds. So the audience in the back, once you hit that final stroke, they're still going to be hearing your sound for at least 4 seconds. Okay, so you always want to make sure at the very end of the piece, you give it some time and you give it some space. Let me just rewind a second to your ending here. Yeah, so you barely gave it like a second and a half, and then the mallet shafts slam onto the keyboard. Okay, so I would definitely be wary about that much noise of the shafts coming onto the keyboard, just in general. But yeah, so you want to give it some space, give it some time, and then either bring the mouse down to your side, or if you have a bag, they could go to the bag, or if you really want to put them on the instrument, gently lay them down. Instead of that kind of like slam, especially if you're mic'd, because if you're mic'd and you do that, it's going to be really abrasive to the audience's ears. All right, so let's recap a little bit. There's a lot of things going really well. I actually really enjoy this performance a lot, and there's a lot of really beautiful moments that you're performing really well. You're getting a great sound out of the instrument, especially from synthetic bars. It's a really pretty and pleasing sound. Your technique looks very solid and relaxed. It doesn't look like you're doing anything weird with your hands or your fingers. Everything has like a nice smooth flow to it, so that's really good. And your phrasing, for the most part, is really tasty and really well done. I think you have really good musical instincts, and I can tell that because at no point did the melody ever get lost. I could always tell what the most important part was, and you did a great job of voicing that and giving it a nice dramatic arc, except that one middle section when I think we could do a little bit job of phrasing. But the rest of it was just really, really tasty and really well done. You're playing with a lot of maturity that I certainly didn't have in high school. So awesome job. Keep up the good work. Congratulations, Esteban, on a great performance. You're super talented and very musical, and I can't wait to see where you go and where you end up. I'm going to put the link to this performance in the description below, so if you would like to watch it in its entirety without me blabbing over top of it, you can enjoy the performance yourself. Today's honorable mention is from Seth in Paradise, California. This is the final run of their marching band show for the year, and it's indoors and it's only the percussion. And if you're wondering why, it's because their end of season shows got canceled because of those crazy fires they were having out in California. So this was actually their final run of this material. It's a really solid performance and I really enjoyed it. Just a word to people who may get motion sick, this was done with a GoPro on top of the performer's head, and they utilized the modern front ensemble technique of keeping time with your head. So if you have a little bit of motion sickness, I would maybe just listen to it instead of watch it. If that sort of thing doesn't bother you, then you should be fine. But I really enjoyed the performance. I don't have much to say about it. I'm sure your instructors gave you a lot of feedback throughout the season. It was really cool though. It's very exciting music, and it looks like you guys were really having a good time and enjoying it. All right, everybody, that's all for today. If you would like to submit your video to the show, please email me, see a link in the description for how to do that. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or things you want to see on the channel, leave a comment or send me an email and let me know. All right, guys, subs if you liked it, thumbs if you loved it, and bells if you want some more of it. I'll see you next time.